there, guys. Sorry, it's been a while since I've read. Here we go, chapter 17. The tunnel, Dwarf Caverns, it's called. The tunnel smelled of stale earth and mold. Within 5 steps, we were submerged in pitch black. The only thing to guide us was the dwarf's insults echoing from the stone walls. It sounded like there were several dwarves speaking instead of one. I heard the words ugly, stupid, vile, putrid, half-wit, and witch over and over. Goldie held tight to my hand, and Wolf walked closely on my other side. His calm gave me reassurance, though the darkness was unsettling. Each step felt treacherous. This place is creepy, said Goldie. Do you think he's trying to get us lost or killed? No, he can't, I feigned confidence. He's bound to take us where we tell. Ah! I tripped on a loose stone. I caught myself on Wolf, but yanked Goldie down with me, so we tumbled into a heap. Goldie let loose an ear-splitting scream, made 10 times louder by the cave. Help! The cave's collapsing! We're dying! Quiet, Goldie. I only tripped. Goldie stopped screaming, but she continued to whimper and breathe in short, erratic gasps. I want to get out of here. I don't like this dark. Calm down. As long as we follow the dwarf, we'll be fine. As soon as I said this, I realized I could no longer hear the dwarf. He had stopped talking. I listened for footsteps, but didn't hear any of those either. Dwarf, I called. Are you here? Goldie clutched my arm. He left us here to rot. He can't leave us here to rot, I said, but my heart sped up. Maybe he made a turn and we missed it. Follow me, said Wolf, and he pressed on without me. Wolf, wait. Come, said Wolf. Don't be afraid. Then his presence faded from me, and I instantly felt exposed and alone. The darkness was so complete I almost felt like I didn't exist, except that Goldie's hand was crushing mine. Ouch, Goldie, not so tight. I don't want to die. We're not going to die. We just need to find the well, and then we should be able to we should just find the wall, and then we should be able to feel our way along the sides of the cave. You take the right side, I'll take the left. Goldie reluctantly let go of me, and we walked our way along the cave's opposite walls, feeling for any curve or corner that would lead to another tunnel where the dwarf and Wolf might have gone, but we felt nothing. I think we should go back. I do not think this is a good idea. Ah! Goldie's scream quickly faded in a way that didn't seem natural, as if she'd been swallowed. Goldie! My heartbeat thumped so loudly now it was echoing off the walls. I took another tentative step. Suddenly there was nothing beneath my feet. Cold, dank air whooshed in my ears. I was plummeting down into a deep, dark hole. Down, down, down I went, my thoughts and memories rushing up as I descended, and then in the darkness I saw the faintest glow and thump! I landed in a pile of something like sawdust. Lantern light spilled over my surroundings, and I found I had to shield my eyes. Not too far away from me was Goldie, coughing and covered in the black filth of whatever we had landed in. It looked like ashes and soot. Wolf was at the bottom of the pile, wagging his tail. He was getting around surprisingly well with his injury, only limping slightly. It must not have been as serious as it had seemed back at the river. The dwarf stood in an entryway holding a lantern. Took you long enough, he groused. Why didn't you warn us about the fall, I said, still trying to calm my pounding heart. You didn't ask, said the dwarf, with a wicked smile. It was very rude not to warn us, said Goldie. Don't tell me about rudeness, he hissed. You invoked a curse most abominable to dwarves. I felt a little stab of guilt for invoking a charm that the dwarf thought of as a curse. Of course it was a curse to him. We forced him to help us when he didn't want to. I should have known better. I'd seen people bound by magic before, and it's no happy thing. It's always little girls that take our beards and make us do their bidding, the dwarf continued. Nasty little witches. But what about Snow White, said Goldie. The 7 dwarfs were happy to help her. The dwarf muttered something like, spoiled brat. And I was suddenly curious how the famous tale of Snow White might be told from a dwarf's point of view. Granny said there were always at least 2 sides to any story, if not a dozen, and clearly the heroine in the tale was not as beloved by the dwarves as we thought. Not by this dwarf, anyways. Let's get moving. I haven't got all day, said the dwarf. Wait, I said. The dwarf turned to glare at me. Yes, master? I winced at his words. I couldn't undo what I'd done, but maybe I could try to make things better. What's your name? The question spilled out of me without thought, but I immediately felt it was the right thing to say. I wasn't sure how meaningful a name was to dwarves, but I had the feeling that calling him dwarf wasn't an endearment. The dwarf raised his eyebrows. My name is Borlin. I wouldn't have guessed that, said Goldie. I thought for certain your name was Grumpy. That's not a name, you nitwit. It's a putrid human dwarf insult. Well, if its a name fits the destiny, said Goldie. Then you'd be called Dopey, said Borland. That's not... Thank you, Borland, I said, cutting Goldie off. We appreciate your help. It means the world to us. Borland turned his back on us and walked down the tunnel, still muttering insults but more softly than before. The tunnel was narrow and dim, the only light coming from Borland's lantern. After a series of twists and turns, we entered a huge cavern. Huge was not a big enough word, actually, nor was enormous, massive, or giant. It was like a mountain, only inside out. The air was extremely warm, though I saw no fires except for the torches and sconces on the wall. Ledges and roads zigzagged all around the sides of the cavern, leading to other tunnels, and everywhere there were dwarves, thousands of them. They bore wheelbarrows and pickaxes. The cavern echoed with the thumps and pings of mining. It reminded me of the mines on the mountain, only 10 times as big, and the dwarves weren't mining gold, but gems. The wheelbarrows were filled with diamonds, sapphires, emeralds, and crystals of all shades. There were tons of them, heaped up like harvested crops in a field. Some dwarves sorted the gems into bins by their different types and colors. Another team of dwarves poured the gems down chutes where they were cut and polished and loaded into sacks labeled Deep Earth Emeralds, Crushed Crystal, and Fingerling Sapphires. We walked by a pile of gems, and Borland picked up a pale pink crystal and bit into it like a carrot. He crunched on it, swallowed it, and gave a satisfied belch. I like them raw, right out of the ground, he said, and took another bite. Goldie and I stared at Borland. You eat the gems? Said Goldie. Of course, said Borland. Why else would we spend all of our time digging them out of the rock? To wear them like silly humans? But they're gems, said Goldie. They're very valuable. You could trade them for anything you want. Why would we trade gems when gems are what we want? The only thing I'd trade for is rubies. Rubies are my favorite. His eyes grew hungry. My hand instinctively flew to Granny's ruby, making sure it was still hidden beneath my dress. I remembered what Granny said about how dwarves love rubies, but I had no idea they liked to eat them. How awful would it be if Borland snatched the ruby ring from me and ate it right before my eyes? Are there no rubies found here? I asked, curious. They are very rare and valuable to dwarves, said Borland. We used to find a small crop of them at least once a month, but their numbers have dwindled over time. It's been years since I've seen a ruby. What I wouldn't give for just one. They have the richest flavor. Borland closed his eyes, probably imagining a glittering ruby the way I might salivate over a juicy strawberry. Granny's ring felt a little heavier around my neck. Come on, said Borland, returning to his usual grouchiness as though he'd been neglecting a task. I could be searching for rubies right now instead of carrying on with you three. We walked up a narrow ledge. Some of the dwarves stopped and stared, while others glared, clearly understanding the cruel thing we must have done to make Borland lead us through the caverns. Borland hung his head in shame as we passed. I felt another stab of guilt. Further and further we went along to the edge. It turned out there really were rivers of fire below us. From high up we could see them snaking through pillars and bridges of stone, glowing orange and bubbling. No wonder it felt like an oven in here. I guess the dwarves didn't mind the heat, but how could they live in a place like this? Where do you sleep? Goldie asked. We have homes within the caves, said Borland. With beds and baths and tables and things? Of course. What do you take us for? Gnomes? Borland grumbled. We wound in and out of the tunnels for what felt like hours. Some tunnels were rough and dull, while others were smooth and shiny, polished by the rivulets of water that snaked down the walls. Some sparkled like millions of tiny gems stuck together, though Borland told us that was simply an effect of the minerals in the stone. On many caverns, the ceilings and floors had huge stalactites and stalagmites. Sometimes they joined together, creating pillars that made the caves feel like a palace. I never imagined the world would look like this underground, said Goldie. I always thought it would be just dirt and worms. It is beautiful, I said. Borland suppressed a smile, clearly pleased by our appreciation of his home. We dwarves have been in these caves for thousands of years before humans existed. Goodness, I never thought there was a time before humans, said Goldie. Borland scoffed. Yes, your species thinks quite highly of itself. Think you're kings of the world, don't you? But many noble creatures existed long before you. Your wolf friend comes from a line of ancient as dwarves, and I dare say will both still exist long after you run yourselves into extinction. We have gathered more knowledge about the mysteries of the earth than even the most learned humans, even more than witches. True, said Wolf. Well, you don't have to be smug about it, I said to Wolf. Finally, we began to ascend, at last going up instead of in and through and around. Goldie stumbled and fell at my side. I helped her up, but she resisted and slumped against the side of the tunnel. I can't, she whined. We're almost there. Look, I can see the light. I helped Goldie to her feet, and then she leaned on me as we walked toward the pinpoint of light ahead of us. Greek! Borland cursed under his breath. Hurry, he hissed. These tunnels can be precariously close to the surface. We walked as quickly as we could, and the circle of light got bigger and brighter. Pebbles and dust trickled down on us from the ceiling. And then the walls groaned some more, and larger rocks started to fall, rocks as big as my head. Back! Go back! Borland shouted, and then we turned to run the other direction. The rocks continued to rain down on us. Borland dropped the lantern, and everything went dark. I can't see! Ouch! Said Goldie. Wolf yelped, and Borland gasped and groaned. But even though I could sense the rocks coming down on me, I felt no pain. My cloak. It was protecting me, just as it had protected me against the bear and the sprites. Everybody come to me, I shouted. Goldie and Wolf immediately came and crawled beneath my cloak, but Borland did not. Borland, I shouted. I reached out blindly, flapping my arms around until I slapped his head. Don't touch me. Ugh! He gasped as more rocks came down. I'm sorry, but this is for your own good. I snatched him by the beard and jerked him to me, then spread my cloak over everyone while the rocks showered down. They bounced and rolled off my hood like giant hailstones. Then they grew smaller and fewer until there was nothing more than trickles of dust. Is everyone all right? I asked. I think so, squeaked Goldie. Wolf? I asked. I felt his nose touch my hand. Borland? There was a muffled grunt. Oh, sorry, said Goldie. She shifted and Borland gasped for breath. Are you all right? Goldie asked. Stupid girl nearly suffocated me to death. Come on, said Borland, this way. Which way? Said Goldie. I can't see a thing. Follow my voice. Keep your hands to the wall, said Borland. I think we should all stay close to Red, said Goldie, just in case there's another cave-in. If you keep quiet and move, there won't be one, snapped Borland. Still, it's safer with Red. Goldie took my hand and Wolf brushed up against my side, and I was glad it was dark, otherwise they would have seen my eyes getting wet. No one had ever told me they felt safer with me before. We turned a corner and there was a light. Just a faint glow at first, but it got stronger as we walked. I looked at the state of us. We were all covered in dust. Wolf was no longer black, but ashy gray. Goldie's golden curls were grayish-brown, but even though my cloak was no longer red, it didn't have a single tear. It was still whole. We reached a dwarf-sized door. Borland knocked, and in a few moments another dwarf opened it. This dwarf had twinkly blue eyes, much merrier than Borland's, and a snowy white beard that reached to his potbelly. Borland, said the dwarf, where in rubies have you been?